When you step into a space carrying the energy of someone who knows their worth, everything around you starts to shift. People respond differently, opportunities align more naturally, and the dynamic in your relationships begins to transform. Self-worth is not something you announce, it's something you radiate. It shows in the way you walk, the way you speak, the way you hold eye contact, and the way you make decisions. When a woman deeply understands her own value, she stops operating from a place of fear and begins to operate from a place of power. This kind of energy doesn't chase approval, it commands respect. It doesn't settle for crumbs, it expects the feast. Men, whether consciously or not, pick up on this vibration immediately. It's in the subtle way you carry yourself, your silence, your boundaries, your patience. It creates a pull that makes them lean in, not because you're playing a game, but because you're embodying a standard. Many people try to be attractive by focusing on external things like appearance, charm, or strategy, but the real magnetism comes from the inner frequency you hold. When you know you are worthy, you no longer need to prove your worth to anyone. You become less reactive to rejection and more selective with your attention. You stop waiting to be chosen and instead begin to choose. This quiet shift in energy flips the entire dynamic because men are wired to pursue what feels valuable and rare. When your self-worth is unwavering, you automatically communicate through your behavior that you are not desperate for validation. You don't over-explain, you don't beg for attention, and you don't tolerate inconsistency. Instead, you stand firmly in your identity, and this firmness becomes magnetic. Imagine two people in a room, one constantly seeking approval, adjusting themselves to be liked, and another who simply exists with grace and self-assurance. The second person doesn't try to impress, yet all eyes are drawn toward them. That's the power of self-worth. It's not about arrogance or superiority, it's about a quiet, grounded confidence that says, I know what I bring, and I don't need to convince anyone. Men chase women who feel secure within themselves because that energy promises emotional stability, depth, and strength. It's like a beacon. They sense that they cannot easily shake you, and that challenge ignites their pursuit. This energy of worth also dictates the kind of men you attract. When your self-worth is low, you unconsciously invite people who mirror that back to you. Those who take advantage, give the bare minimum, or keep you in uncertainty. But when your worth is high, those same people fall away, and only those who can match or rise to your level remain. You naturally start to set higher standards without forcing it. You don't need to constantly remind someone of how they should treat you because your entire presence communicates it. Your words, your actions, and your energy are all in alignment. This magnetic pull is not something that fades with age, looks, or trends because it comes from an inner foundation that doesn't waver with external changes. It's timeless. It makes men curious, attentive, and invested because they sense they're in the presence of someone who doesn't give their attention lightly. They want to earn it, not because you've demanded it, but because your energy silently declares that it must be earned. It's the invisible boundary that operates without being spoken, drawing people toward you in a way that feels natural and effortless. The boundary of emotional availability on your terms is one of the most powerful ways to shift the dynamic in any romantic connection. It's not about being cold, distant, or manipulative. It's about recognizing that your emotional energy is valuable and not something to hand out without discernment. When you meet someone, it's natural to feel excitement, connection, and a desire to express your feelings. However, many people make the mistake of emotionally overinvesting too early, sharing too much, giving constant attention, or attaching their mood to the other person's responses. This overgiving creates an imbalance, making the other person feel like they don't need to earn your emotional presence because it's already freely available. But when you set a boundary that your emotional availability is gradual and based on consistent effort, you send a powerful signal that changes how you're perceived. When you give emotional energy too quickly, You unconsciously communicate that your attention isn't something special, it's automatic. Men, in particular, are drawn to experiences where they feel they've earned something meaningful. If everything is handed to them without any sense of progression, the mystery and drive begin to fade. By holding this boundary, you're not playing games. You're simply ensuring that your emotional world isn't open to someone who hasn't demonstrated the capacity to hold it with care. This means you respond with warmth, but not with overexposure. You engage in conversations, but you don't rush to share your deepest fears and dreams. You show interest, but you don't center your entire day around them. You express affection, but you don't abandon your emotional balance in the process. This boundary is incredibly attractive because it communicates self-respect. It says, "My heart is open, but access to it must be earned." It makes a man step up, not because you're withholding affection, but because you're not giving it away too easily. He starts to feel that your attention carries weight, and that weight creates value. He knows that when you do open up, it's sincere, not automatic. He understands that your emotional investment means something real, because it wasn't handed out on the first encounter. It was built through consistency, trust, and effort. Emotional availability on your terms also prevents you from being emotionally dependent on early stages of a connection. Too often, people tie their self-worth to how someone else responds, and this creates anxiety, overthinking, and unnecessary chasing. But when your availability is regulated by your own standards, not by fear of losing them, you maintain control of your emotional state. You remain grounded, and this groundedness is magnetic. Men sense when a woman isn't shaken by mixed signals. They sense when her world doesn't revolve around them. It creates intrigue, respect, and a desire to earn more of her emotional presence. This boundary also allows genuine connection to grow more authentically. When you don't rush emotional intimacy, it gives both people the space to observe, understand, and align their intentions. Instead of emotional intensity clouding your judgment, you're able to evaluate his consistency, his values, and his effort over time. And because he knows that you won't just hand over your emotional investment, he becomes more intentional. He realizes that your attention and vulnerability are privileges, not entitlements. This shifts his behavior from passive enjoyment to active pursuit, from taking your presence for granted to valuing every moment of your openness. When something is rare, people instinctively place more value on it, and the same principle applies to the way you offer your time, energy, and presence. Scarcity doesn't mean withholding affection or playing mind games. It means recognizing that your effort becomes more meaningful when it isn't scattered everywhere without discernment. When you make yourself too easily available, rearranging your plans at a moment's notice, constantly initiating conversations, or always being the one to adjust, it sends a silent message that your energy can be accessed without effort. Over time, this can make someone take your presence for granted, not out of malice, but because human nature values what requires pursuit and commitment. But when you set a boundary that your effort will not be given away freely to someone who hasn't earned it, you shift the power of the dynamic. You no longer operate from a place of proving yourself, you operate from a place of quiet certainty. Think about how people treat exclusive events, luxury items, or rare opportunities. The limited availability creates anticipation, curiosity, and respect. People line up, they wait, they invest more to be part of it. When your attention and energy are treated as something special, men respond in the same way. They sense that your time is valuable, that your presence isn't something to take lightly, and it triggers a natural desire to rise to meet that value. It's not about being unavailable for the sake of it. It's about living a life that's already full and rich, so that your world doesn't shrink to revolve around someone new. When your effort is scarce in the right way, it creates emotional space. That space allows a man to lean forward, to pursue, to show initiative. If you're always the one filling the gaps, there's no room for him to step in. If you're always the one texting first, planning everything, or making yourself available at any hour, he doesn't get the chance to contribute. But when you create a natural rhythm where your attention must be earned, it encourages him to become more intentional. He starts thinking about how to see you again, how to impress you, how to be more present, because he understands that your energy isn't guaranteed. This boundary also protects you from emotional burnout. When you're constantly overgiving, you drain your own emotional reserves, often for people who haven't shown they deserve that level of investment. By holding back and offering your effort thoughtfully, you maintain your sense of balance. You don't lose yourself in someone else's timeline. You teach others how to treat you by the way you treat your own time. If you act like your energy is abundant and limitless, people will assume it requires no effort to receive it. But if you treat your energy as precious, they'll begin to mirror that respect. Scarcity also enhances appreciation. When he doesn't have constant access to you, each interaction becomes more meaningful. A conversation holds more weight, a date feels more significant, and your gestures are remembered because they're not part of a constant stream. It creates an emotional rhythm where he looks forward to seeing you rather than assuming you'll always be available. This natural anticipation keeps his attention sharp and his interest alive. It's not manipulation. It's a reflection of real value. When you genuinely value yourself, your schedule, your emotions, and your energy, you stop giving them away cheaply. This subtle boundary of scarcity makes your presence something to earn, not something to expect. And that shift makes men chase because what is valued is always pursued. The consistency test is one of the quietest yet most powerful boundaries you can hold, and it operates without you needing to say much at all. It's about observing whether a man's actions align with his words over time, not just in the honeymoon stage when everything feels exciting and effortless. In the beginning, almost anyone can say the right things, send sweet messages, and make grand gestures. Words are easy. Consistency requires genuine intent and effort. When you hold the standard that only consistent behavior earns deeper access to your emotional world, you stop being swayed by temporary attention. Instead, you focus on patterns, not promises. This boundary filters out those who are merely interested from those who are truly invested, without confrontation or games. Many people rush into emotional closeness after a few intense conversations or romantic dates, assuming early enthusiasm equals long-term commitment. But early enthusiasm is not the same as reliability. The consistency test isn't about being suspicious or cold. It's about quietly watching how someone shows up over time. Do they keep their word? Do they follow through? Are their actions steady or do they fluctuate depending on their mood or convenience? When you allow consistency to be the measure, you avoid getting emotionally entangled with someone who can't sustain the energy they showed at the start. This boundary is especially attractive because it communicates self-respect without you needing to say a word. When you don't chase after inconsistencies, when you don't reward hot and cold behavior with more effort on your end, it sends a message that your standards are real. If he cancels plans repeatedly, you don't beg him to reschedule, you simply note the pattern. If he makes promises but rarely follows through, you don't make excuses for him, you take it as information. This calm, grounded response creates a silent test. Men who are serious recognize that your attention isn't won through charm but through reliability. Those who aren't serious often remove themselves from the picture because the inconsistency they thrive on doesn't hold power over someone with boundaries. Consistency also builds trust, and trust is the foundation of lasting attraction. When a man realizes that you're not impressed by momentary gestures, but by steady effort, it challenges him to bring his best self forward. It encourages him to prove through action that he's worthy of your continued investment. It turns the dynamic from chasing temporary highs to building something meaningful. Instead of rewarding sporadic attention, you reward reliability, And this silently trains the dynamic to become healthier and more stable. Holding this boundary also protects your emotional well-being. When you don't attach yourself to promises but to patterns, you prevent yourself from riding the emotional roller coaster of hope and disappointment. You give people the space to reveal themselves through time. Consistency reveals character. It shows whether someone is genuinely interested or just enjoying temporary attention. By holding this standard, you naturally become someone who doesn't settle for crumbs because you wait to see who shows up consistently with the cake. This quiet expectation creates a magnetic pull because real men want to meet a woman whose standards require them to show up fully, not halfway. It's not about ultimatums, it's about calmly letting time and behavior reveal the truth while you remain steady in your worth. Emotional self-control is one of the most underrated yet magnetic qualities a woman can embody, and it has nothing to do with suppressing your feelings or pretending to be emotionless. It's about mastering your inner world so deeply that your happiness, confidence, and sense of security are not dictated by someone else's actions, moods, or attention. When you set the boundary that your emotional stability belongs to you and not to another person's validation, you naturally create an aura of mystery and strength that pulls people in. Men, in particular, are highly attuned to emotional energy. When they sense that your mood swings are not dependent on whether they texted, called, or complimented you that day, it shifts the dynamic entirely. You stop being predictable. You stop reacting to every small thing. Instead, you respond with grace, composure, and quiet confidence, which is far more powerful than emotional overreactions. When someone hasn't earned deep emotional investment yet, but you react strongly to every little thing they do, it gives away a kind of power. It shows that they have influence over your state of being even without truly committing to you. But when you remain calm and emotionally grounded, you subtly communicate that your peace is not easily shaken. This boundary makes your presence more intriguing because it shows that your inner world is well protected. It's not about being indifferent or playing hard to get. It's about valuing your emotional energy so much that you won't hand it over recklessly to someone who hasn't proven themselves trustworthy. This emotional self-control also changes the way you communicate. Instead of reacting impulsively to a delayed message or a change in plans, you take a breath and assess whether it truly deserves your emotional energy. You stop sending long, defensive paragraphs or making dramatic assumptions. Instead, your responses are measured, thoughtful, and clear. This creates a subtle tension that draws him closer because he can't easily predict your reaction. He can't push your buttons, and that unpredictability creates a sense of depth and intrigue. Men are naturally drawn to women who can hold their emotional ground because it signals maturity, self-respect, and strength. It also keeps you from falling into the trap of emotional chasing. When you lack self-control, you may find yourself constantly seeking reassurance, overanalyzing every word, or adjusting your behavior to keep his attention. But when you hold emotional control, you remain centered regardless of the external circumstances. If he pulls away, you don't spiral, you observe. If he gives mixed signals, you don't chase clarity through panic, you give him space to reveal his intentions through action. This calm detachment doesn't make you cold, it makes you captivating. Another powerful effect of this boundary is how it naturally commands respect. When a man realizes that he cannot easily manipulate or emotionally destabilize you, he subconsciously elevates his behavior around you. He becomes more careful with his words and more intentional with his actions because he understands that you won't reward emotional games. You are not someone who reacts impulsively. You are someone who observes, reflects, and responds with clarity. That kind of emotional presence is rare, and rarity breeds desire. Mystery also flourishes in emotional control because when you're not constantly broadcasting every thought and feeling, it gives him space to wonder, to think, to pursue. If every reaction is loud and immediate, there's nothing left to discover. But when your emotional responses are measured, You create emotional space, and in that space, desire grows. You become someone he wants to understand, not someone he can easily read and predict. Emotional self-control builds a quiet allure that lingers long after the moment has passed, leaving an impression that keeps him coming back, wanting to know more, wanting to earn a deeper place in your world. The boundary of standards, not ultimatums, is one of the most elegant and effective ways to inspire genuine pursuit without creating unnecessary tension or power struggles. Standards are about how you live, what you accept, and the energy you embody, whereas ultimatums are about forcing a specific outcome through pressure. When you lead with clear, unwavering standards, you naturally filter out anyone who isn't aligned with your value system without needing to argue, plead, or threaten. Standards don't require repeated explanations. They are communicated through consistent behavior, lifestyle choices, and the way you allow people to treat you. A man doesn't need to be told dozens of times what you expect because your actions, boundaries, and the way you carry yourself already make it clear. This silent clarity is powerful because it sets the tone for how the entire dynamic unfolds. When you have strong standards, you attract people who either match them or step up to meet them. It's not about demanding perfection. It's about refusing to lower your expectations just to keep someone around. This creates a natural filter where men who aren't serious, consistent, or respectful will quietly remove themselves because they sense they cannot maintain the level required. On the other hand, men who are truly interested and capable of meeting those standards will rise to the occasion because they view you as someone who operates from self-worth rather than desperation. Standards create structure in the dynamic. They set the boundaries of what is acceptable and what isn't without creating a combative environment. This boundary is attractive because it exudes calm confidence. When you're operating from standards, you're not anxiously waiting to see if he'll treat you right. You already know what behavior you accept and what you don't. If someone falls short, you don't explode or issue dramatic ultimatums. You simply adjust your level of engagement. If he's inconsistent, you match his distance. If he disrespects your boundaries, you withdraw without fanfare. This kind of response shows emotional maturity and self-respect, and it often makes a man reflect on his behavior more deeply than any heated confrontation could. It's the difference between saying, "You need to treat me better," and S being someone who naturally commands better treatment through her actions and self-conduct. Another important aspect of this boundary is that it shifts the focus from trying to control another person to controlling yourself. You can't make anyone be consistent, respectful, or intentional, but you can decide what you tolerate and how you respond. When you hold firm to your standards, you stop chasing potential and start evaluating reality. This is a powerful shift because it keeps you in your feminine power while maintaining clear boundaries. Men respect women who know what they stand for and don't compromise their core values to keep someone's attention. It also creates a dynamic where your presence becomes something to earn rather than something to take for granted. When he realizes that your standards are not flexible depending on how much you like him, he understands that the only way to stay in your life is through genuine alignment, not through temporary charm or minimal effort. This inspires men to show up fully because they sense they are dealing with someone who won't settle for less than what aligns with her self-worth. Standards operate like an unspoken contract. They communicate your expectations clearly without emotional chaos. Instead of issuing ultimatums that often lead to resistance, you live in a way that naturally filters out those who cannot meet your level, allowing real connections to thrive effortlessly.